Thanks. Our next speaker is Michelle Corbally, coming from Los Alamos National Lab, talking about GC-GC HRT and Pearson correlation.
Hello, everyone. I can hear myself, so I think y'all can hear me. My name is Michelle Corbally. As you all know, I work at Los Alamos National Laboratory, very well known for analyzing explosives and explosive components. As you've heard earlier, we look at these things called plastic bonded explosives. I actually personally typically don't analyze the explosive parts of plastic bonded explosives. I only look at the plastic parts. So I currently for this project was working on looking at plasticizers, one in particular called HyVac Oil. HyVac Oil is actually a high vacuum pump oil like you would have typically to run your GC and your rough pump. We actually use that for explosives sometimes. So it typically reduces friction, it decreases viscosity, and it really makes it safer to handle explosives as a whole. So in April of 2022, we actually found out that our main supplier of high vacuum pump oil went out of business. This is due to COVID, and I think the owner's dad, something happened. It was a very small company. And so we found out that we actually had to find a replacement for HyVac oil. But as you guys can assume, high vacuum pump oil is pretty difficult to analyze. So this is how high vacuum pump oil is actually made. It typically goes through a desalter and a heater and undergoes vacuum distillation. And then you get this light vacuum gas oil and this heavy vacuum gas oil. So typically it's very, very, I think it's low vapor pressure and low viscosity. So first, one of my colleagues, Jeremy Tisdale, actually looked at the physical characteristics of this oil, and we found that there were a few different types of vacuum pump oils that were on the market that had a similar density to that of HyVac oil. Originally, we actually thought the dynamic viscosity was going to make a difference, but we realized that that range is actually quite large, and so we threw out that set of data for the most part, but we did try to find oils that were within a 0.86 to 0.88 gram per centimeter squared range to test chemically, so I wasn't testing like 100 vacuum pump oils. So I think everyone is used to seeing a GC-GC chromatogram of diesel. It's really clean. You can see all the peaks really nicely in 2D, not necessarily in 1D. But HyVac oil is not as easy to analyze. It is basically a blobogram, and this is actually a 3-hour runtime on the GC-GC for each sample. So as you can probably guess, I'm not going to try and identify all of these compounds one by one. So I actually had to use statistics in order to look through the entire chromatogram and figure out what is in the sample, what is different between these samples compared to HyVac oil, and does that matter? This is kind of the methodology that I use typically. I won't go into too much detail, but I did use high temperature columns. I was not just burning ResTech columns one after another. And then also I did EI, which I have presented that data previously, but I redid some of the samples in CI, including PCI and NCI, and that did actually make a significant difference. So I originally tried to do something very simple. Something that we have in the government is that we have to present a lot of our data to program managers. Program managers typically are not from the STEM field, so if you try and go into really advanced statistics or chemistry, you lose them in like a minute. So originally I was like, maybe we can do, a carbon range distribution and we'll understand that. But that was not statistically relevant enough to really distinguish and or compare oils. We also tried doing ring double bond energy compared to carbon number. Pretty graphs, but again, it did not give enough data in order to present it to a program manager or really differentiate anything. So I went back to my PhD. I actually worked in a forensic science group, and I did Pearson correlation between arson samples for the most part, ignitable liquids. And Pearson correlation is basically a measure of the linear correlation between two sets of data. That's very important because you can explain it kind of like an R-squared value for a trend line. It's very visual, people typically get that. And so for the HyVac oil in particular, I looked at the Pearson correlation in EI and the different CI modes. So this is actually the EI right here. So it was a Pearson correlation of 0.93 to 0.99 between those samples. So here are all of the Pearson correlations in EI, NCI, and PCI. In EI, you can see, I haven't highlighted them here, but there's actually 3 oils that are within that lot-to-lot variation of HyVac oil itself. It was this Labanol LVO 100, Durtex 68, and VWR 19. This is kind of where I had originally stopped my research, but we actually got samples back and found out that one of the oils was causing our explosives to turn the wrong color, which is not good. So we went back, I did PCI and NCI, and I actually found out through the NCI that this Durtex 68 had something that was statistically different compared to the high vacuum pump oil. So I decided to turn Pearson correlation on its head, and kind of similar again to like how an R-squared value works. Typically your R-squared value goes down if you have points that are outside of that linear trend line. So what I did is I actually found, using pixel-based, which is probably not the best answer now that I've listened to some talks today, I was able to find where the major differences are between the 2 samples and identify those samples by using Pearson correlation, but backward. So we did find this 4,4-diamino P-terphenol, and that's actually what is probably causing our explosive to turn brown. It is a compound that will typically turn a reddish or yellowish color when it degrades. It's basically the sacrificial lamb for an oil, and that's usually when your vacuum pump oil starts going into this gross color. And so in conclusion, there's a lot of differences between HyVac oils. As you could see, those chromatograms are very, very complex. But we did find that there were a couple of oils that did work in order to replace this HyVac oil, or at least have an alternative in the future. And then I realized how important doing chemical ionization is now, so now I do it on all my samples. And so we did actually exclude this Durtex 68. And saying it can be transformed to be used as a discovery-based technique, Pearson correlation is very easy to explain, I think, compared to, like an artificial neural network or some of the other stuff I like coding. And this is Los Alamos. We kind of look like the bottom right picture right now, but I'm hoping soon we'll be more like this bigger one. And yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.